Some mysteries are best left unsolved.
We're just past the halfway point of the season, and man, are we getting some big drops and reveals this week. But before I get to that, this episode is about people questioning life in the silo and how not everything appears to be what it is at face value. So, if you haven't guessed, I'm talking about Silo, Episode 6, The Relic. If you haven't seen it, this will contain spoilers. And as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review. So, not a lot happens for most of the episode, and about half of it is told through flashbacks to when George was alive and was helping Jules find the relics. So, I understand that a lot of people have had issues with the pace of this show, and I, to be honest, haven't really experienced that because I enjoy watching it weekly because we don't really get that many shows, or at least I don't have that many shows that I watch weekly anymore. So I don't really find it's a pacing issue, but this episode certainly, the pace was a little slow right up until the end, but I'm going to get to that. But before I do, just to say thanks for taking the time to choose to watch this video. I really appreciate it, and if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel. I'm posting more videos all the time, including Silo 3D videos, so make sure you've got the notifications on so you don't miss it. And if you make it all the way to the end, leave a like as well. So yeah, let's talk about the flashbacks first, because they are not more important, but they certainly set stuff up and reveal a few things that we kind of had suspected as an audience. So it opens with George and Juliet together, and remember, this would be an unsanctioned relationship, and this does come up a few times in this episode, and it was mentioned a few episodes ago as well with the Marnes and Mayor, so it seems that an unsanctioned relationship is something that's tolerated, but just kind of frowned upon. And this episode's really exploring sort of what's at the core of the relationship between George and Juliet, or at least what Juliet thinks was at the core. And in this first flashback scene, she does ask him who his friends are beside her, and he kinda dodges the question. And all these events are around the time period that she stole the tape that Bernard was so interested in when he first met her when she became sheriff. Now, she also mentions that people get sent to the mines for having relics, and the mines do get mentioned a few times in this episode as well, so I assume that's some sort of less severe punishment than going outside. But what exactly are they mining for, I wonder? George is curious about the relics that have been found down in the tunnel. He wonders what they are, who made them, were they important, how important were they? All the stuff that we've been asking as an audience for the last few weeks, and he thinks that these relics are the key to solving the mystery of the silo, or the biggest question of the silo as he puts it. But he doesn't say what that is. Anyway, they explore the depths where the machine is, and George is still questioning the existence and life in the silo, so it's good to see a member of the silo, or someone that lives there, finally doing this. It's been 6 episodes, and yeah, we've had people asking questions, but they've mostly been in relation to the murders and the crimes that have been happening. The whole general life on the silo has remained untouched, at least up until this episode. Also, there's a huge fixation in this episode of the watch between George and Juliet. He gives it to her, it doesn't work, she fixes it, gives it back to him. I don't know what it was setting up with fixing the watch. Maybe it was indicating to me that there's a possibility that she could fix the digger in the future. But yeah, I'm going to talk about the watch later on in the video. But the majority of the flashback scenes in this episode are just setting up for a big reveal about George and the relics. So the second time frame is, as you'd expect, the present, and Juliet is looking into Trumbull to work out why he killed Marnes. So last week left us on a cliffhanger, saying that she was going to use the relic as bait, and that's exactly what she's done. She's planted the Pez dispenser in his home. And once it gets discovered, we find out quite a bit about how relics are viewed and treated within the silo. They need to get handed over to judicial within a few hours, and basically, Juliet needs approval from a judge to investigate a relic, so she has to go and visit Judge Meadows with Sims down in Judicial to get clearance to take this in the direction that she wants to go. And when they go and see Judge Meadows, she's not feeling too well. Now, they've mentioned the syndrome last week, and I assumed that's maybe what's affecting her. But the syndrome does lead into another character, but I'm going to get to that later on. But as well as relics, we also learn a little bit more about the Pact and how it views relics and those who own them. Judicial also has a collection of all the relics since the rebellions, and Sims seems to have an encyclopedic knowledge of them. And when you think about it, why are they keeping these relics? I mean, they could just destroy them and it would solve the problem, so I don't get why they're cataloguing them and keeping them long term. And you'd also think that Sims would be against her looking into all this as he killed Trumbull. But the guy's pretty smart and he goes along with it. I think he's trying to control the narrative and control Juliet, and Billings even tells her that once they've left Judicial. And Billings does get a lot of focus this episode, but he's not really coming down on Juliet's side or Sim's side, so eventually I think he's going to have to choose whose he's on. So, on the hunt for the relics, they go and see Kennedy to learn about black market relics. Now, I knew there'd be a black market in the silo. There's a black market everywhere, and I wonder what else it deals in apart from relics. And this scene's also kind of weird as well, because as I mentioned earlier on, the watch does get a lot of focus, and Kennedy notices it straight away. Now, I did think that maybe there was some sort of clue in the watch, but given the fact that Juliet repaired it in a flashback, and she wouldn't have known anything at that point, I don't think that's the case. But yeah, I think there's definitely something more to the watch than at least I'm realising at the moment. And speaking of things, there's more to it. We learn quite a lot about George in this episode. The fact that he had an ex before Jules, Regina, who recognises the watch straight away and collected relics for George. He was sort of basically using her as a reverse fence because she had a lot of family members, so she could use them to find them and keep them that way. And when this all gets revealed, you can tell that Juliet is shaken straight away. She had no idea about the ex, no idea about him hoarding relics. She's completely shocked by this. And while this is all going on, Sims is looking into the history of the Pez dispenser because it has popped up in the silo before. And I'm going to get into what he was looking at in my theory video tomorrow. So again, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. So once he works out that George previously had the Pez dispenser, Sims takes Bernard to go and confront Juliet. And he's worked out that she's planted it as well. So he's really got her dead to rights here. But the unexpected happened when Bernard covers her back and sort of gives an alternative explanation as to how Trumbull could have got this dispenser. And he also as well reinforces the cover up with Marnes in the mayor's death. So yeah, this is like the only real scene Bernard's in this episode, and he doesn't do much, but there is a twist. Although we don't know for sure if Judge Meadows has the syndrome, Billings has. Hence all these weird hand movements at the start of the episode when he was going into Judicial. I thought it was maybe some type of code, but I guess not. But yeah, he's got the syndrome, but what exactly is it? I did think it was maybe something that affected you if you lived underground for a long period of time, so I assumed it would affect older people, but Billings isn't that old. And he mentions that he's worried that his daughter might have it, so it's passed on genetically somehow. But what exactly is it and what's causing it? I'm not too sure. Let me know what you think if you haven't read the books in the comments below. If you have, just keep it to yourself and smile to the end of the season. So after finding the truth out about George and that he may have been using her just to get his hands on relics, Juliet's thinking about resigning before she finds out the truth and realises that the ex, Regina, is the one that turned George into Judicial and therefore kinda led to his death. In fact, pretty much 100% did. So she goes to see the ex-girlfriend, and this is where the show really steps up. Before she spills the beans, Regina puts a fan on as if she's seeming to muffle a mic or some sort of recording device. And we've had this mentioned in almost every episode. Sandy done it last week where she said she thinks she was getting watched. We've also seen other characters turn on taps and devices in case they think they were getting monitored somehow. But anyway, that's not important. Because what is the contents of the conversation or the meat on the bone. So Juliet thinks that Regina's got the hard drive, but she doesn't. What she does have is what George traded for it, and that's a relic pre-rebellion. So something pretty serious, and when you find out what it is, it kind of seems like nothing, but then, you know, we're going to get to it because this relic is a book. In fact, it's a guide to Georgia, which doesn't sound a big deal, but it does have a lot of pictures of life before the silo. You know, think of like a tourist brochure, people running about hills, kayaking, doing sports, all that sort of thing. And remember, these people have been underground for at least 150 years, so just seeing more than one tree in more than one scene, because that's all they have of the outside world, is blowing Juliet's mind. This lets her know that there's life before and beyond the silo. And the consequences of this are huge. I mean, George's ex says it, that knowing this or having it will get you killed. But yeah, the fact that the book exists is huge. Again, it lets people know that there's an outside world, but it's also been kept safe for over 150 years. And I'm sure it's not the only relic that must have survived since before the rebellion. So I wonder what else we're going to get, but this does raise a lot of questions. And this isn't even the last reveal of the show. The big ending is we find out that there is CCTV, or at least some sort of monitoring system in the silo, monitoring the inhabitants. Now, it's not made clear if it is judicial. The setup with the whole janitor's closet thing and the fact that Judicial's got all these anonymous spies makes me think it's them. We don't get it confirmed. And I did mention in my last theory video that that's what could be inside the janitor's closet. So if it turns out I'm right, I'm pretty chuffed with myself. And if it turns out that it's not Judicial, I'm still pretty chuffed with myself anyway. But what's interesting about this room is if you look at the technology and the architecture, it's very different from the silo. And the two guys that are in there just say, we need to wake him up. So is that Sims? Is that Bernard? Is that someone else? Let me know what you think in the comments below, because I really want to hear your theories on it. But yeah, these are two massive bombshells that this show dropped in the last sort of closing 5 minutes. And I did think it was the dullest episode so far, apart from that ending. The main plot didn't move that far ahead from where it was last week. And I'm kind of worried that the episode did end on these two big drops, that they're not going to instantly pick it up next week. So I don't think we're going to get answers to either of them 100%. We might find out who's running the CCTV, but I don't think we're going to get anything else beyond that. And learn a little bit more about the Pact and hopefully about the Syndrome as well. It's definitely all building up. Now Jules knows why sort of Holston wanted to clean, and I wonder where she's going to go next after finding out about this book and the fact that at one point there was life outside the silo. We're more than halfway through and some stuff is paying off and others is still waiting to. Jules is questioning herself, her relationship and her world. And all this is going to lead to one direction, which is, I think, the big question of the silo, which is, why was it created in the first place? But yeah, what do you think is going to happen with the book and the relics? What do you think's going on with Judicial and the CCTV? And as always, why do you think the silo was built and who's responsible? Now, I'm doing another theory video after this week's episode, so that's going to be dropping tomorrow, which is Saturday. And if you've made it this far, please leave a like on the video, and if you haven't done it already, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't watched them already, I'd say check out my 2 silo theory videos before the next one drops. And I want to hear your theories as always, so let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me on Twitter at The Geeks Reviews. As always, my name's Al, and remember, don't tell anyone you want to go outside.